And then in amongst all of that, they actually managed to drop in a couple of really quite significant policy announcements.
Get Radio Breakfast with Rich Smith.
Rachel Reeves' spring statement. And of course, we booked in Angus Aston from Wise Investment to demystify everything that was going to be potentially happening with Rachel Reeves' statement yesterday. But morning, Angus.
Morning, Rich. Good to speak to you.
It's lovely to speak to you. Always wonderful. But I feel that this conversation is not quite as maybe hardcore or as in depth as maybe we're expecting, or potentially what could have been. It was seen yesterday as going to be a big spring statement with lots of things being clarified and what's going to be happening. But actually, ultimately, what happened it was a bit flimsy, shall we say?
Well, I think there was a lot of filler in terms of reviewing how the Labour Party and the Chancellor thinks they're doing, and of course they put a very positive spin on everything and sort of highlighted their various achievements in terms of NHS waiting lists coming down and so on. In amongst all of that, they also sort of chucked in a few of the same dig repeatedly at the Conservative opposition, as expected. And then in amongst all of that, they actually managed to drop in a couple of really quite significant policy announcements, but in the shortest possible sentences and couched in terms of what the benefits of this will be for our economy. So I'm thinking specifically of cuts to welfare, which were basically sounded a bit hurried based on the Office of Budget Responsibility saying, well, all those welfare reforms you've announced are going to save $5 billion. Actually, they won't. You need to go further. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, of course, was an announcement of a $2.2 billion increase in defence spending, which is a response to the changing global environment, or words to that effect. Essentially, the government is studiously avoiding mentioning Donald Trump and the new US administration's massive change of direction.
I was just going to say,
and the uncertainties that creates, because they're trying to be diplomatic. So that's what I took from it in the main. And there's more to talk about in terms of the fiscal headroom, if you're interested in that.
Angus, it's just to sort of drift back onto what you're saying, and this is exactly why we get Angus on, because it's tactical. Of course, everything is tactical. Yes, the Labour Party are in power and they are delivering, as you said, a positive spin on things that are happening, things that are going on. But also, we're all well aware that the economy needs a kick up the to use probably sort of very, very crass language. And those things are going to ultimately fall back onto things that we are not going to like. And something that was, again, sort of glossed over, no further tax rises at the moment. But that very much at the moment. It's not to know. It feels like it's coming, and it will be ultimately at the next budget, I would have thought.
Right. Well, I think if I was a member of the government, I'd be saying, well, the forecasts tell you, despite this growth being revised downwards this year, the OBR is forecasting that growth will actually be better than previously forecast in the next 3 years as a result of a boost to defence spending and a sort of house building drive actually having direct positive effects on the economy, and therefore improving tax receipts over time, so that the books magically balance 2 years earlier than forecast, and we end up by about 2029, 2030 with a nice bit of spare cash. They reckon about just under 10 billion of spare cash, also as a result of the proposed cuts to welfare. But the problem is, you change one little thing, whether it's inflation is different, interest rates go up a bit, and therefore the cost of debt goes up. Any little change of assumptions is going to sort of completely knock that off course. So yeah, there might be further tax rises. They've promised not to raise certain taxes, which are pretty significant. So what will it be? I mean, I couldn't really guess at this point, I have to say.
It feels like it's that whole Venetian blind situation of if you pull one end of it, the other end goes up, and if you pull the other end of it, the other end goes up, and it is trying to find and address that balance where actually things are both moving in that kind of right sort of direction. There's there's interesting things. I mean, you mentioned with house building. I mean, everything mentioned. There needs to be cause and effect, and certainly with house building, there's a shortage of housing. You need to build more houses. Oh, brilliant! Tick in the box. Great, wonderful news. However, how do you build those houses? There aren't the people to build the houses. It takes a long time to build houses. There are massive problems and issues, and things have been sort of altered slightly in terms of where to build, how to build, and the quickness to build it, all kind of things. Yeah. They're sort of problems that it's easy to solve by saying, yes, we need to do that, but it's actually implementing how we are going to get to do them.
Yeah, I think
that is ultimately the problem.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, planning blockages, finding the land. It takes time to build houses properly. It takes the skills. Well, there's apparently an investment in construction training, electricians, builders, plasterers, etc., in the trades. You might say that we used to have a lot more people in this country doing those trades, but they were from Europe and they've gone home. Okay, so train our workforce, great, more jobs here, that's fine. But you're right, that target that they had of 1.5 million homes to be built in this parliament has slipped to 1.3 million. And I think someone smart, probably Paul Johnson from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, pointed out that actually that's now 1.3 million across the UK, whereas before the target was 1.5 million homes in England. So it's kind of slipped quite a long way. However, it has to help. So we'll see. We live in a very uncertain global and even local environment. So, we just need to, I think, probably watch our pockets a bit in the next few years.
That sounded fine. I'm gonna just speak about something that Rachel Reeves didn't speak about, and you briefly mentioned in her not speaking about. That's a really awful way of saying it. The Trump effect. Trump has come to power, and the chaos that it brings not only to the headlines in the papers that you can read and what have you, but the kind of vast kind of shell shock and shock effect that it has across the world, ranging from policies being made up here to, you're hearing of tax barriers being put in place at Canada, which is across all the way over there, the effect of meeting with Putin to discuss Ukraine, everything that's kind of going on like this, and then obviously this rise in defense benefits. Is this the UK kind of, I don't know, shutting up shop, kind of a little bit going, oh God, we don't know what's going to happen because he is a loose cannon and we're just looking after ourselves at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, trying to keep my own political views out of it. It's obvious, or it seems obvious, that Europe needs to pull together collectively, despite previous disagreements, in order to sort of present a united front, be able to defend itself properly without relying on the US, and hope that this problem goes away in 3.5-4 years' time. But we don't know. So
that's a very diplomatic way of putting it. I won't put you on the spot anymore with that, Angus. Well done.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
Just lastly, I know I always kind of finish up on this because you are the expert, and you've sort of picked up through a few things that I've missed out on, was watching and whatever. Is there anything that we've not talked about? Is there anything that kind of you go, actually, oh, by the way, this is worth knowing, or this is worth keeping an eye on?
Well, I suppose we've already touched on it, actually. We think the autumn budget is done, but actually most of the measures in it are yet to take effect. So rise in employers' national insurance, that starts on Monday week, I think,
Yeah.
6th of April, 7th of April. Same with the increase in the minimum wage. Changes, the stuff that sort of more directly affects us and what we advise our clients about are things like pensions. You know, those changes that have been announced don't start until April 2027. The changes to inheritance tax don't start till April 2026, but they're happening. You need to plan for them now. So there is that sort of localized uncertainty arising from it. And I think you did touch on it. There probably will be more to come. But this Chancellor and this government has decided that they're only going to do that major stuff once a year. So we wait poised in trepidation or excitement, depending on your point of view, for the autumn budget, which, well, I'm happy to come and comment on again if you really would like me to.
You're back. You're already booked in, Angus. I don't care if you're on holiday or whatever. We're dragging you back because I'm pretty sure we'll need a few things unpicking from that for absolute sure. Angus, it's been always a joy and a pleasure. I feel like we always kind of catch things that maybe slip through the net of things that have been said, and it kind of just sort of breaks it down into what's going to be happening and what we can look forward to. And I think sort of I think a takeaway from this is probably, okay, things aren't happening quite yet, but they are on the horizon, so plan for them, I think we can safely say. It's Angus Aston, Director of course, Wise Investment. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Can't wait for the autumn.
Pleasure, Rich. Thanks a lot.
It's brilliant stuff. Yeah, always great to catch up with Angus, of course, sort of demystifying and as I say, just picking up those little tidbits of information that maybe sifted through the papers and the news and what have you. Great stuff. Looking forward to autumn.